Terry was accused of being the gun dealer who sold the AR15 or Colt SB1 223 rifle under the counter, so to speak, illegally to Martin. Martin said that he had purchased the weapon under the counter for $5,000 cash. There is every possibility, of course, that that sort of a transaction can and did occur with some dealers, but Terry was very strenuous in their statements that they did not sell that rifle to Martin Bryant. Welcome to the Wasp Files. Some of this material may be distressing and viewer discretion is advised. Terry Hills was a local gun dealer in Tasmania at the time of the Port Arthur Massacre in 1996. He ran Guns and Ammo with his wife Dorothy, and they ran their gun store and had some interactions with Martin and also some interactions with some of the firearms that were allegedly part of Martin's collection. I spoke to Dorothy, Terry's wife. Unfortunately, Terry is deceased now. Terry was accused of being the gun dealer who sold the AR15 or Colt SB1 223 rifle under the counter, so to speak, illegally to Martin. Terry denied this strenuously right up to his demise. And his wife, who I spoke to as well, who's a lovely lady, said the same thing, that they were treated very unjustly. Terry reported that just prior to Port Arthur, a man came in with long blonde hair who purportedly had, as Terry said, one of the new plastic firearms licenses under the name Martin Ryan. That license was allegedly authorised for the bearer to purchase both semi and fully automatic weapons. There were some reports that there was a fake licensing business operating in Tasmania at the time. But once again, this has never really been determined in an inquest or an open trial as to whether or not Martin Bryant possessed some form of licence. The police said that he did not have a licence. So any firearms he purchased from a gun dealer would technically have then been purchased illegally under the counter, or that he had ID that was legitimate enough for someone to think that he was licensed and then sell him a firearm. Terry reported that sometime just before Easter, a guy with long blonde hair came into his gun store with an AR-10. An AR-10 is an earlier model, if you like, an earlier version of the AR-15 style rifle. It has a much higher caliber. It's .308 caliber. Looks very similar. It has a pistol grip, has a 20-round removable magazine, and very much like the AR-15 has the carry handle on the top. The AR-10 that was brought in was a Dutch model, which had a wooden foregrip and a wooden buttstock. This person came into Terry Hill's gun store and said there's something wrong with this gun, and handed the rifle over the counter to Terry. Terry removed the magazine as per safety requirements and was alarmed and discovered that the magazine was fully loaded with rounds. He then worked the action on the AR-10 and was further distressed when a round was ejected from the breech of the firearm. So the person who came to the store brought in a fully loaded, locked and ready to go semi-automatic high-powered rifle. The complaint was that the rifle kept jamming all the time, and being a Dutch military-style rifle, we discussed previously that there are differences between .308 caliber, which is the civilian caliber, and 7.62 by 51 millimeter, which is the NATO version or military version of .308. So the tolerances and measurements are slightly different. If you were to use civilian ammunition in the AR-10, there was a chance that it may malfunction due to those differences, those slight differences in measurements. Terry basically said that he couldn't look at the gun until after Easter, so he basically entered it into his gun registers, and then kept the firearm. The only thing that Terry said that he had ever sold to the person with the license were some boxes of 12-gauge ammunition and I believe some gun bags. He strenuously denies selling the Colt SB1.223 or AR15 style rifle that was used at Port Arthur, and was accused of being the person who did this under the counter. Martin said that he had purchased the weapon under the counter for $5,000 cash. There is every possibility, of course, that sort of a transaction can and did occur with some dealers, but Terry was very strenuous, and so was Dorothy, in their statements that they did not sell that rifle to Martin Bryant. I also have other information that the Colt SB1 AR15 was actually purchased by someone else directly, which I'll go into further detail down the track. After Port Arthur had occurred, John Avery, who was Martin's appointed defence lawyer after David Gunson was removed, basically braced Terry Hills with the accusation that he had in fact sold that rifle to Martin Bryant. John Avery sent a letter saying that we believe that you did sell the rifle to Martin Bryant, and that if you own up and confess that you did, we will consider that an immunity from prosecution. However, if you continue to hold your denial of selling the firearm, we will find something to charge you with. He sent that letter to Terry Hills. That letter's attached. Terry, as a result, strenuously denied selling the weapon. Shortly afterwards, I spoke to Dorothy, and she said they were raided at their home. She was in the shower at the time, and she reported that carloads of police rocked up to their house, forced their way in. One of the police officers stood outside the door and waited till she exited from the shower. They were requested to attend their gun store and basically hand over the registers and go through all of the acquisition papers, if you like, and disposal papers, and considerations of any of the firearms that may or may not have been associated with Martin Bryant. So they were taken to the gun store. Terry Hill was quite ill at the time, according to his wife. It was quite strenuous on him. And basically their gun registers were seized. To this day, those gun registers have never seen the light of day. So the records of who came into that store, who handed over an AR-10, who purchased any weapons or ammunition from Terry Hills would have been recorded somewhere in the gun registers and or on their records of sale, and they have never been produced in court. Dorothy, to this day, defends the name of her husband in passing, saying that he did the right thing. So these are questions, once again, that should be answered, definitively answered in a court of law with an open trial or a coronial inquest. And those records should be made available. But like most of the ammunition that could be used to determine the guilt or innocence of the party concerned, if you'll pardon the pun, has been locked away till 2091. As an additional action to the stance that Terry and Dorothy took about not selling the Colt SB1 to Martin Bryant, their gun dealers' licences were revoked. In essence, their business was shut down. However, they were permitted to keep their personal firearms licences. So for holding his belief or his statement that he didn't sell the weapon to Martin Bryant that was used at Port Arthur, he suffered the cost and basically was persecuted in that sense, and they took away his gun dealer's licence, which I believe is unethical, if not unlawful. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Wasp Files. Feel free to share far and wide and see the attached files in support of the episode. Thank you.